Welcome back to the Daily Drum on WHUR and Sirius XM Channel 141. This is the Insight segment. I'm Harold Fisher. Tonight, we continue our Back to School series. We are going directly inside the school building to hear from those on the front lines of education. From principals to teachers and school counselors, they are the heartbeat of the classroom. And tonight, they will sound off sharing their hopes and dreams and concerns about this new school year. What are their expectations and what tools do they believe are essential for success? Educators have the mic tonight. My guests are Kara Robinson, sixth grade math teacher, Dr. William Clay, National Award-winning professional school counselor, Dr. Angelina Arrington, head of school for the Bishop Walker School for Boys in DC, and Kevin Lewis, president-elect of the Maryland Choral Educators Association. He is also a veteran teacher of 13 years. Thank you all so much for joining this conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Sure thing. Let me start with the teachers and a teacher's perspective. And Kara, I'll ask you specifically, what are your biggest hope for your students as the school year begins?
My biggest hope for the students is that we have some achievement. I want them to grow, I want them to achieve, and I also want to strengthen their views of what school is and what it can be, what their responsibilities are in school, but also what their benefits are, what they're entitled to, what they can earn, things like that. Because some this year, I believe they were still affected by the COVID virtual learning and all of that. So this might be kind of the last year of those students coming through. So I definitely want to work on closing some of those gaps and kind of pushing them to reach their potential, because in just keeping, honest and observing what's going on in the world, education is going to be really key. And I want to give them every opportunity to, reach their potential and have access to what they need to have access to. Sixth grade math, it has a lot of the math we use in our daily life. So it's very important. So I want to stress that to them and help them to reach those achievements.
Thank you for that, because I'm still trying to figure out how to use my algebra 2 in my daily life. So we need those math teachers who can explain that when I'm standing in the grocery line.
Well, I always say, when you're in school, it also just develops your brain. Like math, we're exercising our brain. So whether you use it or not, that fact that you learned it and you taught and your brain learned how to do something, it helps to strengthen you in other ways. And really, a lot of things are math problems if you choose to look at it that way.
That is fascinating. And I'm glad you shared that, because, I joke about that. And a lot of my peers will say the same thing. Did you really use any of that math? But the fact that you said it does help your brain, for those of us of a certain age who need help with our brains, you make an excellent point. Kevin, you were nodding your head when Kara was speaking. Your thoughts about this new school year and what you want young people to get out of it.
Well, oddly enough, with her mentioning math, me being a music teacher, we touched on math today. This was the start of choir camp for us, and Laurel High School was featured on NBC4 this morning. So we went right from the broadcast into the classroom and started working, even though they don't return to school technically until next week. And one of the discussions we had was about common denominators between different time signatures. So we're touching on the math side and music as well. And it for me, we've been advocating for the arts and for music. We've seen that funding has been significantly cut for this year. And so I received a lot of no's for supplies that we requested for the classroom, and have had to find some alternate means. And so my biggest goal for this year is to make sure that students don't have to suffer regardless of the circumstances that we're dealing with in Washington. And then even some county and statewide things. We'll have an interim superintendent for Prince George's County. And I just want my students to know that regardless of their circumstances, they can be successful. We're a growing Hispanic population, predominantly Black still. And those Black and brown children can learn and succeed and achieve just like anyone else. And so, I don't limit my students. I push them to be the best version of themselves. And we want to continue the success that we had last year, and just build on that going forward.
How do you work around those financial shortfalls when you are asking for equipment and or supplies or even instruments and you get the no? What's the workaround for that?
So we are fortunate to have great partnerships. One of our projects was fully financed by a company in New York through the Donors Choose website. So that was a great thing for us. But the city of Laurel, which is, of course, where I am at, Laurel High School, the mayor, councilwomen, and the Laurel city government has been wonderful. They make a lot of donations to our programs. And to get the students out and serving their community, we do a lot of different projects, whether it's at City Hall. We've traveled to DC. We do a lot of events throughout Laurel, and people make donations to the programs because they see that we're so involved with the community and doing a lot of things. So a lot of those things help. Of course, we do some fundraisers inside of the program. But I've in my 13 years of learning, I knew that some no's were going to come some years, and some years we were going to receive a yes. And so we make sure that we do what we can to save our money, and have been saving some funds just, in case a situation like this arises. So last year we had 10 students who were selected to the Maryland All-State Chorus, which was one of the highest numbers for the state of Maryland. And we were able to foot the bill for them. That was $5,000. So the students could go spend a weekend, work with some guest conductors and directors, and they never had to spend $1 of their own money. So just, a lot of early planning and a lot of community involvement has helped to sustain us, even when we don't necessarily get the funds from the outside.
Dr. Clay, we often hear about social and emotional learning, but what about the social and emotional challenges that you expect to see the students facing this year?
Wow, that's numerous, considering everything that's going on in DC, of course, and just in general on social media. One of the things I utilize as a professional school counselor, and I'm at Walden Woods Elementary School, previously in the middle school, but I'm use a lot of strategies helping the students to validate their emotions, considering what's going on outside of the school building. When they walk into the building, I'm utilizing different strategies to teach them to validate their emotions, how to express their emotions, how to address those issues that are bothering them, and to build their self-confidence up through validating their emotions. And also, I have a program in place. My fathers are highly involved in working with their children.
What is it when you're talking to them and you're trying to get them to express their emotions in what you might consider appropriate and healthy ways? Are they really struggling with that? Do they understand that conversation?
Yes. Yes, they do. Yes. I'm very out of the box with my strategies and doing things that the standard counselor might not do, but it's all about results. So yes, I use a lot of innovative strategies to get the kids to talk about their emotions. For example, I have a lot of play therapy. So I have a little play toilet, and the kids come in and they love playing with it. But I correlate releasing emotional waste to releasing physical waste.
Wow.
And how it makes you feel with a play toilet. And the kids just love it. And then the green light comes on. They say, I said, you have to release it. Because if something is hindering you and bothering you and you keep it inside, it's going to make you sick. He said, yeah, Dr. Clay. I said, yeah, but if you release it, you're going to feel better. And then the green light come on. So that's how I help my students to address the emotional shortcomings they have. And it builds confidence. Like I had one of my fourth graders came in last year, 12-year-old, well, I don't know how old she was, but she stayed in my office about almost 30 minutes to an hour after I broke the analogy down to them. And it works excellent with males.
I'm very interested at some point finding out what that emotional X-lax is.
Seriously, it works. It works. I have the visuals. I have the spray. I mean, males are visual. So they have to see it, and kids are visual. So when I walk them through the steps, then they realize, I just need to release this. Yes.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, next 2 days later, they walk around the school smiling. They feel relieved, and that's so. Yeah,
I like that. Dr. Arrington, what is your biggest priority for this school year when you look at the whole school and what it needs to be successful?
Sure. I have three things that I'm always thinking about that remain my priorities. My teachers just got back today.
Okay.
And our kids are going to come. We are post Labor Day school. So we start school officially on September 2nd. And one of the things that I do with everybody in the building, this is rated E for everybody, which is building a sense of community and belonging. That is important for the adults. That's important for the parents. That is important for the children, the students, to know that this is their home. This is their home during the day, and that this is a safe space. And I tell everyone that my goal as a leader is to send you home whole. So whatever happens on the street happens. Once you hit our doors, this is a place where you belong. This is your place. The other two areas of priority for me are reveling in intellectual pursuits. I think we have lost the recipe of liking to learn things, just getting joy from reading a new book or discussing a math problem. And Miss Cara, I'm a math teacher as well, middle school math, and I'm biased in that way because it does help the thinking process. Even if you don't use algebra 2, you do have to think about how to break things down into chunks, how to recognize patterns. So we do use a lot of those skills in real life. So in a building of boys, we are K-5, all boys, Black and brown boys, and we enroll up to 96 students per year. It's important for our boys to know that it's really cool to learn, and I want them to have fun, whether it's arts, whether it's sports, whether we're doing a literacy initiative or math or science. I want them to really revel in the joy, that feeling that you get when you learn something that you're really interested in. And also revel in the practice and know that sometimes you have to practice stuff that you don't always like, but that helps you be able to lean into the stuff that you love. And the last thing that I think about every year is joy, and particularly for Black and brown boys in a school environment. Research tells us, and our anecdotal experience tells us, that our boys are going to get the discipline, they get the structure, they get the rules, they get the guidelines, but they don't always get the joy. So I want to round that out, to get all of those other things, but also to get that sense of joy and knowing that life is not going to always be joyful all the time. You got to find pockets of joy, and being joyful is a skill that you can help build with children. So those are my three priorities ongoing every year that I am hoping for my students when they get back on September 2nd.
Cara, how do you keep your students motivated and excited? I mean, Dr. Arrington made a really good point. Sometimes you have to practice things that you may not be particularly interested in. And I'm sure there are some students who can do the math with one half of their brain tied behind the back, the other not so much. So how do you keep them all motivated and excited? And how do you stay motivated and excited?
Mm-hmm. Well, that is the daily struggle, right? Of trying to make sure everybody's engaged when you have so many different and competing forces going on in the classroom. One of the things is they know that my content is important to me. So, I'm very serious about my work. I'm very serious about my notes, but everything I have them do, I do myself. So when they're taking notes, I'm taking notes. When they're solving a problem, they've seen that I've solved the problem. So when they see me doing the same things that they're doing, then they feel a little more motivated to do it, because they know I'm not just giving them busy work. I'm not just telling them to do something that I don't think is valuable, because I did it too. And I remind them, I say, I have 4 classes. I did it 4 times today. That's how important it is. You need to know how to do it. So that's one thing I try when I do have students that are, progressing a little faster. A lot of times they can explain it in a way that their classmates understand. So I ask them, well, you want to work with this person, or I'll let you can work with somebody, but make sure you see that they got it right first before you work with them. And then they get to kind of teach each other, because I've heard them, they might say the same thing that I said, but change like 1 word or 2 words, or use an example from a class that they had before, or they'll say like, when we were in this class and we did this, it's like that. And I don't have that point of reference for them. So that gets them engaged. This year in particular, I've been planning a little more where we can get up and start moving around the room more, because they like to get up. They like to work in groups, different groups. I want to, this year, I'm going to also incorporate even more manipulatives, things like that, so they can be more hands-on, because we are getting a better response from them with that. But I think that those things, when you put them all together and you center it around the math, and everything is centered around the math, it's also that predictability of my room. They know when they come in here, you know, you're going to do some work, you know, you're going to do some math, you know that I think it's important, but we're going to have fun with it. We're going to laugh, we're going to joke, but we're going to get our work done. And so that keeps them kind of engaged in my room.
So hold that point. I'll let you finish on the other side. I do need to take a very, very quick break. Don't forget, you can hear this in every edition of the Daily Drum Insight segment via podcast on WHUR.com. The original Quiet Storm with Raheem Devon is next on WHUR. We continue on Sirius XM channel 141 in just a few seconds. Welcome back to the Daily Drum on Sirius XM channel 141. I'm Harold Fisher. We continue our conversation at the Educators Roundtable. This is part of a series we're doing this week as we head back to school. Teachers, administrators, and of course the children. My guests are Cara Robinson, 6th grade math teacher, Dr. William Clay, National Award-winning professional school counselor, Dr. Angelina Arrington, head of school for the Bishop Walker School for Boys in DC, and Kevin Lewis, president-elect of the Maryland Choral Educators Association and a veteran 13-year teacher. Cara, you were talking about staying motivated before the break. Finish your point, please.
Yes. So, so that was for the students. And then for me, it's funny because I was just talking to a new teacher, because I'm going into, I believe, my 9th year now. And we were getting front loaded with all of this information of things that everybody wants from us, the things that we always have to do. And it can feel very overwhelming. But I said at the end of the day, I bring everything down to my students. So my students are entitled to a certain type of education, and I feel responsible to provide it. So when there's a lot of noise, when there's a lot going on, I focus in on the lesson, I focus in on what they need and how we're going to get there. And so it keeps me motivated because I know that they need it. Even though they don't know that they need it, I know that they need this. I know that they need the discipline, they need the work, they need the procedures, they need the actual concepts. So that's kind of my motivation. I just really take education seriously. And, I want to make sure that it's never, I didn't have a teacher that cared. They're not going to be able to say my math teacher didn't care if I learned it. So I just want to, that's kind of keeps me coming to work. I don't want to take off because I think about, well, if I take off, well, who's going to teach the lesson? So those kinds of things, keep me motivated.
Mm-hmm. Kevin, you were nodding your head. Your thoughts about what she was sharing?
Oddly enough, I'll say I didn't feel as excited until this past weekend. And it was just the thought of being back around my students. This summer, because I took the president-elect position as of July 1, but we've been in meetings since May. So during the summer, I felt like, what summer? I felt like I didn't have a chance to really rest and recover like I wanted to. But then for some reason on Saturday, I said, wow, we go back to school Monday. And though it was for staff, I knew that we were going to be working on our music already. And so just the thought of being around a new set of students, we're bringing some new kids into the program who have a lot of talent. And now we just get to shape the direction of their talent. and mix them with some veteran students. And so every year you get a new group of students. Every year it's new music, it's new challenges, and also new opportunities, because we didn't see the NBC one coming this morning, and it just kind of happened recently. And so just anything that I can present to them makes it fresh for me. And again, working through my association, the Maryland Music Educators Association, under the choral umbrella, has been fantastic. Again, if we're not in these positions, then our Black and brown children have not had the opportunity. So I'm just grateful to be here to advocate for them. It's a lot more work on the plate, free work at that, but one that's necessary so that we can build a future that is more reflective of the state of Maryland and the country that we live in.
One of the things I don't think that a lot of people truly understand when you're talking about music, whether it is instrumental or choral, most of us only see the end result when you're talking about students. We don't see the, dare I say, the math of music. We don't see the structure of music. We do not see the repetition or hear the repetition. We don't hear the flat notes. We don't hear how harmony is developed, and that is at the very least difficult. We only hear the good stuff at the end, or the good stuff as it's becoming the great stuff. What is it about your craft, Kevin, that you want parents to know?
Well, at the very core of it, your children are doing something that they love. Some students, of course, have to take these classes because they need them as a requirement for graduation. But more often than not, the students that are participating in the arts are doing so because they want to be there. And so, as a parent, if nothing else, I want to support my child because they're doing something that they love. And so we want to see more parents show up to these events and support their students. And then on the other side of that, students who participate in the arts do better in their core subjects because, like you said, there's repetition to this. So the same repetition we practice with a song, with an instrument, you've got to practice that repetition to understand the math concept. Those things, they translate to other subjects. Music involves the whole body. So it is physical education. It is math. It's, you connect to the songs emotionally. We study the text. So you learn the history of composers, the history of the music, and understand why songs were written the way they were in the times that they were written. We cover all genres. So that it makes for a well-rounded student, that kind of thing. And then there's, again, just the discipline to keep practicing it. And I use the phrase all the time: don't practice till you get it right. Practice till you can't get it wrong. So the students are working hard, and that's the way that we find success. You don't hear a good concert because we practiced it a couple of times and let it go. You hear a great concert because we kept working at it. And after we got our notes right, then we worked on our facial expressions. We worked on our emotions. So all of those things go into it. And so, it's not just a thing to do. The phrase "it's just music" bothers me so much because we truly are working hard in the classroom, and it translates to so many other facets of a student's life.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Clay, what is the thing that worries you the most when it comes to caring for the mental health and development of the students you counsel?
Understanding how to define trauma and what trauma looks like. I think that's a major issue in the Black and brown community, especially with the parents. The parents don't realize, I always say genetic loads the gun, environment pulls the trigger. So they bring in everything from inside of the house into the school. And there's so much trauma going on in the house. For example, if two parents are arguing with each other to a 5 or 6 year old child, that's trauma. But the parents don't realize they're traumatizing the children. Then people walking right into the classroom. So then as counselors and as educators, as heads of schools, we have to learn to address those issues. But that's why it's important that we reach out to these parents so they can have an understanding what trauma looks like And then we start breaking it down with the students. So when I go into the classrooms, we're having these conversations. I talk about the 4 T's a lot with my students from kindergarten to 5th grade. Transfer your trauma with truth and transparency. Those 4 T's are very critical so the kids to understand trauma. They understand how to talk about it, how to discuss it, and how to express it. And tell the truth and be transparent. And you give them a lollipop and they remember the 4 T's. So I'm walking down the hallway and said, "Doc, give me the 4 T's." And one child might say truth, another might say transparency. But that's how I address trauma, working with the students and working with the parents.
You were old enough to remember any of those kinds of things that may have happened to you as a child or your peers when you were a child. What is different now compared to what you and I may have experienced in the home? Trauma, you could argue that parents argued back in the old days and they still argue now. So why are things apparently worse now than they were back then? Or are they?
I would say, well, we know, of course, we can talk about social media, video games, and the kids know now they can call Child Protective Services if they're disciplined. I think that's the difference between 20 or 30 years ago versus now. Social media, the peer pressure from social media, the amount of time they spend playing video games, the type of video games they're playing, it's crazy. And again, just the kids will tell you in a minute, you put a hand on me, I'm gonna call CPS. Or if they could kids are very smart and intelligent now. So as educators, we have to, we have to be very careful. I think that's the difference. Back in the day, your neighbor will whoop your child if you came home and you got in trouble. You can't do that now. You can't do that now.
That's very true.
Because if the neighbor put a hand on them, they might get reported to CPS. And if they come into the school, educators are falsely accused all the time because students talk. Middle school and high school, they know the protocol, they know the process. So I think those are the major differences: the video games, cell phones, and understanding the process and the limits educators have.
Dr. Arrington, we've so far spoken so much about care for the children, but what about the teachers? As Dr. Clay just said, there are obstacles that they face that perhaps 30 years ago teachers didn't. So how do you address the teachers' needs?
Absolutely.
To keep them from being burned out, running out?
Because that is a real thing, being burned out as a teacher. And as a leader, one of my priorities really is the care and feeding of my faculty and staff. And it's not just teachers. I include my administrators in that. I include my back office staff, every adult in this building who, whether they're student facing or back office, they really need a leader who attends to their mental health and wellness. And there are some very practical things that I would recommend for or would like to share with other leaders that I do. I don't want to say recommend because that sounds like I'm telling people what to do. Everybody's going to do what they do on their campuses. But one of the things that there are a couple of things. Number one, if you really believe in something, then there needs to be a policy for it and there needs to be money behind it. So right when I walked in, I created a policy called Family Time and Restoration. We do not talk to each other after 6 o'clock or on the weekend. And I, as a head of school, also don't take calls and meetings after 6 o'clock and on the weekend unless we have an event that night or it's an emergency. Now, I might be working after 6. They might be working after 6, but we take off the pressure of having to be plugged into work after 6 o'clock. I want my faculty and staff to fill from their overflow. You can't serve from an empty cup. And this really is a job of service. I don't even want them serving from a half full cup. I want them to serve from the overflow. And to be able to do that, they have to be offline. So I've made that policy not just in-house. I have also told my parents, you may not hear from your child's teacher after 6 o'clock or until the next day because they are with their children doing homework. They are at the gym. They are at yoga class. You may not hear from them on the weekend. I've also talked to my board about I only want to work after 6 a certain number of times a week. And on the weekends, I can only work a certain number of weekends. So making a policy and sticking to it and being an example of that policy as a leader is really important to not burn your faculty and staff out. And then there are other things that we do that are smaller, but that are significant. For example, I feed people all the time. That is a cultural from my culture. If I care for you, I'm gonna feed you. So we have grab and go breakfast. We're gonna have lunch. We'll have a taco truck at some point. So we make sure that we have time for food and fellowship, because this is a building from the diaspora. This is if I was to say our foundational culture of our school, it's African American culture. And one of the things we do is feed folks. So it seems small, but it's really important to my faculty and staff to know that they'll have time for food and fellowship. I'm redoing one of my rooms to be a wellness room, a Zen den, where the teachers can go during the daytime. If they need a break, it's a quiet space, 10, 15 minutes. Go there. My teachers have couches in their rooms where students have, their reading area. If you need to take a 10 or 15 minute nap and the kids are out at lunch, please go take a 10 to 15 minute nap so you can refresh and renew. I encourage them to take their PTO days. Those are your days. I'm not really concerned about where you are. Please go take your PTO days. Go to the doctors. Take your kids to the doctor. I think it's recognizing the humanity of our faculty and staff, of our teachers. That's really important, that leaders can lose sight of that, and recognizing our own needs as leaders as well. And we have to live out that example for other people. People will follow what we do as leaders. So at Bishop Walker School, there are policies and money behind it. It's the last thing I'm going to say, then I'll pass it back to you. One of our other policies is how we communicate with each other. I tell all of my families, I do not have any interest in having an adversarial relationship with you. That means if you are upset, I expect you to emotionally regulate before you engage with my faculty and staff. You may not come and be out of pocket with anybody that works here. And again, that's rated E for everybody. That is my faculty and staff. They have to also know how to talk to parents and our community members as well. But there is this culture that we don't speak enough about. There's this culture of sort of beating up on teachers and heads of school and principals and learning specialists. That is not okay. It gets us emotionally regulated. It makes us feel unsafe. And so my faculty and staff will tell you, I'm staying 10 toes down on how we talk to each other here. And again, that's rated E for everybody: board, parents, students, faculty, and staff, because at the end of the day, this has to be a safe space for the people who work here. And I want them to come to work. I want to come to work. I want them to like being here.
Yeah. Cara, you were the author of a very passionate speech to the Prince George's County School Board earlier this year, and it went viral. I did want to kind of take you back and have you share how that passionate speech and love of teaching and children, how did that moment, or how has that moment changed you professionally?
Okay. I would say, well, one, it validated me. A lot of the times I didn't speak because it felt like, well, who's going to listen? Nobody cares kind of thing. It's just something we talk about, whatever. But I got so much feedback from not every teacher that saw it in my building, but then I got emails, I got social media things that it was referenced on all these other platforms, and then people from other states, and we're talking about it. And so it made me feel like, okay, so it did need to be said, because maybe people are not feeling heard, people are not feeling like they're really understanding what we're saying. And then it also kind of added support for the fact that sometimes we just have to speak it plainly and clearly, because we try to communicate in ways where it's a little more I don't want to say watered down, but that's kind of what it is. And I think at that point, I was just so exasperated by the whole situation that I needed to be clear about, like, this is what we need, this is what we're not tolerating. And I will say it empowered me in a way to be like, it's okay to stand up for yourself. You don't have to, take hits from everybody, from every way, at every time, at every point. Like, I'm a person, and sometimes you have to remind people of that. And so it did kind of help me to see how you can stand up for yourself. You can do or kind of step out of your comfort zone too. And the world is not going to end. Everything is not going to stop, and people are not going to, change how they look at you. So I felt like, or not change, it won't change for the bad at least. And so I felt like it changed me in the way that it empowered me. And it brought attention to the fact that don't assume that people know things. Don't assume that people feel things. Like, you need to say it. You need to let people know to make sure everybody is clear about where you're coming from. And, when you can speak up for people that maybe are not ready to speak up for themselves, or maybe not comfortable, that you should take it if you can, because, they're feeling it. And because they don't say anything, then it kind of just goes, it either affects somebody else or they take it on themselves, and it has a ripple effect. Now, none of these, because that teacher didn't communicate how they felt, and then they quit mid-year, you got to think about the ripple effect that has on the school, on the kids, on everybody. But so if I know that they feel that way and they're okay with me saying something to somebody about it, then I will, for them. And I think it makes everything better. And a lot of times we're able to clear up misunderstandings, miscommunications, by having that communication with each other.
Kevin, I want to ask you if there was perhaps one thing about your students that parents do not know that you believe they should know. What would you tell them?
You said parents about their students?
Mm-hmm.
So it does break my heart when parents don't show up. Again, I know how hard these students are working to put their best product forward. And we can pack a football stadium for a football game, and we can pack a gym for a basketball game. But when it's concert time, you have a lot of empty seats. And like I said, people don't view the arts as important. But I'm sending kids to school on full scholarship. I just had my first student who finished my high school program, who is now in Hell's Kitchen on Broadway. And she came back with her mother in tears. And, they gave me a card that was nicely written and said, thank you for, believing in me and pushing me to do something, because she had no original plans after her senior year. And so this avenue is opening up a ton of doors for people, if they choose it. It's an unconventional way to go, but it's important. We have, a million high school athletes that turns into 250,000 collegiate athletes, and then you get the top 1% professionally. But there are, ways to be a musician. You can be in the armed forces and be a musician. You can, use your musicianship as a side gig, a side hustle. There are churches who are looking for musicians everywhere. And then there's just the therapeutic side of music. And so, for parents, I don't want them to just look at their students and say, oh, this is just a thing, or, it's just a hobby. If your child is truly passionate, then they need your support. And they need to find means where they can get support. I wish, that I could have gotten an earlier start and taken some private lessons early on. So once I got to the college level, I had to play catch up. And so, again, my job in public school is to try to give students as much of a private lesson feel in my classroom as I possibly can. Of course, we know teachers give up their free time all the time. So like I said, we've been working camp this week, and students don't have to be there. We do after school rehearsals. We have weekend gigs, because I know if my students are with me, then I know what they're not doing. They're not getting in trouble. They're not places that they shouldn't be. They're not around people who will have a negative impact or influence on them. So, I just try to keep them close to me so they have as many opportunities as possible. And I hope that the parents see the work that we're doing. But again, the kids have to be willing. So I hope the parents understand how passionate they are about what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Clay, same question that I just asked Kevin. What would you tell parents about their children that you do not believe that they know?
monitor anything and everything pertaining to the cell phone. Clearly, these parents are clueless with, man, when I tell you these kids they're beyond creative with the cell phones. And the parents are clueless. They truly don't know everything that's going on with the cell phone. So I would tell every parent listening to this conversation, monitor anything and everything pertaining to the cell phone. I mean, I can imagine what it's like in middle school and high school. I'm in elementary and the parents are clueless. So I can imagine in middle school and high school, and there are different ways and different avenues of monitoring the cell phone. They just have to talk to other educators, talk to the teachers, talk to the principal, the counselors. We all know the ins and outs of how the cell phone is utilized by the students. So those parents need to have those courageous, conscious conversations with the educators and other members in their family who understand how the cell phone is being used by the students. So I would say the cell phone is critical.
Finally, Dr. Arrington, I'll let you have the last word. What do you want to tell students, not just yours, but all students as they get ready for this new year, whether they be elementary, middle school, high school? What's your message?
That is a good question. I'll go back to what I said first, which is two things. Number one, revel in the joy of learning. Find your tribe, which means find your group of friends that align with you, that are doing good things, because you in elementary, middle, and high school, you are who you hang out with. Find the tribe of people who are going somewhere and who are doing things that are positive and things that contribute to the school. That's number one. And number two, have a good time. You only do this once, only one time. So lean into it, sit in it, experience it. You want to be able to look back and say, you know what? My senior year in high school, I did A, B, C, and D, or I made so many friends in middle school. You only do it once. Don't rush to get to the adult side, because I tell you what, any adult that I talked to, I think we were bamboozled. Be over here. You don't want to get here quick. So enjoy what you're doing and have a great time. And we all of our educators, all of our parents, community members, we are rooting for you and we love you and we want you to have a great school year.
I think that's a perfect place to end this conversation. I'm going to thank all of you so very, very much. Kevin Lewis, Kara Robinson, Dr. William Clay, and of course, Dr. Arrington. I really appreciate your time, and we will certainly be in touch. And have a good school year to all of you, and a very successful one as well. And maybe I can sit down and learn how to talk when I talk to teachers. That is the Daily Drum for this Tuesday, August 19th. I'm Harold Fisher. Good night.